Hello. Well, this is part two of my bodybuilding bikini competitions throwback story. So if you want to hear more about my actual competitions, click the first video. If you want to know more about how that impacted my body image and my relationship with food, then continue on watching this video. And I was surrounded by people who were super competitive. I was training with friends who were also competing in the same show. We're training for the nationals. Have been competing in the nationals for years and years, and have friends with pro cards, and it was just like a very intense environment to be in. So just also painting a context of I'm not just this oh, I'm just gonna do this one time, nobody around me understands, this is just something that I'm going through. There's a lot of people who prep for their shows and people around them aren't that involved, but at the time where I was very in the industry. I was working in supplement stores. I worked for a meal prep company. So I knew a lot about what all these different diets look like because I was the one making them. I wasn't writing the plans, but I was physically making the food. I'm prepping people. And that's also another thing, weighing your food. So something that normal people don't do, or maybe not know, is bodybuilders, not all, but most of them weigh their food. Now, this is a general blanket statement. Not everybody does this, but one of the methods that a lot of people use is calculating their macros. The ones that they mostly look at are fat, proteins, and carbs, and they break them down to see what their body would require for the maximum amount of lean muscle mass and least amount of fat gain. And everybody kind of had their own secrets and formulas. Some people go keto and eat no carbs and high fats. Some people would do the if it fits your macros method, where they can essentially not stick to the same food as long as the numbers add up to the same number. This is not to say if anybody is right or anybody's wrong. There's also people who just do oh, they know a quarter cup of rice has this many carbs, so they'll do that. And a lot of the plans are also catered based on how each body responds to it. So there's not one diet that works for everybody. A lot of times the coaches will give a general-ish plan based on the person's body type, lifestyle, food sensitivities, activity level, do a general plan, and then check in on a regular basis to see how their body's reacting to it, and either change the meal plan or tweak the training plan, etc., etc. So there's a whole industry and lifestyle around this that I didn't really know about previous to being in the depths of it, but it's quite interesting. And I learned a lot about nutrition and how it reacts to different bodies, and especially in my body, because when I was prepping, I would eat a very set, specific amount of foods. I just want to preface, not everybody does this. This is just how I did it, and I also know it's a common practice. I basically ate the same thing most days. Chicken breast or white fish, green vegetables, and some sort of complex carbs like sweet potatoes or rice or oatmeal. And that's generally it. So meal prep in bulk and then weigh it out, and then just kind of eat that throughout the week, each meal, whatever it is. So when I would switch things up, even if it's brown rice versus sweet potatoes, or maybe I eat simple carbs one day, I get white rice to carb up and go train legs, I was noticing how different kinds of food were having an immediate effect in my body. Even the same quantity of food would make me feel fuller than others. And I also noticed how my moods and energy levels, mental health would change based upon if I was feeling nourished or if I felt depleted and was cutting really hard. Oh, another thing that I actually learned though from being super hyper aware of my food and knowing about macros and all that is I got really, really creative in the kitchen. One of the greatest gifts for me that came out of my bodybuilding experience is actually learning how to cook. When I used to do hours upon hours of cardio, my pastime, the thing that made me feel better, is watching cooking videos. It's I couldn't eat any of it, but I'm gonna watch other people make it and learn how to make it. And that was my thing. I'd just be watching YouTube channels about cooking all the time. I would implement some of these recipes and modify them to fit my diet. And I got really, really good at making protein pancakes. Yeah, I just became very creative about using similar, a certain very limited set of ingredients and then reinventing them in a way that emulates an experience, a food that normally would be a cheat meal or something. Just making things healthier. I learned that you don't really need all the butter and breading and heavy carbs and everything. There are ways to make it lighter and made with vegetables. And now I'm really getting into learning how to make things vegetarian. And I feel like that skill set of seeing the possibilities and being able to like switch ingredients around to create the same flavor palette and texture and aesthetic, I think that's something that I really learned through bodybuilding and cooking. Also working in a meal prep kitchen really helped. My boss at the time was a Red Seal chef. He lost a lot of weight himself by learning how to do that, like how to take foods that are delicious and he already knows and just rework them in a way that makes it like healthier. So that was a cool skill to learn. So this whole experience allowed me to gain so much awareness and consciousness over my food and my body and how that interacted. Once you see something, it's hard to unsee it. So before I did all of this, my relationship with food was completely different. Like I didn't think about the numbers, I didn't think about the calories or how it would make me look. Like I just didn't really think about that. And after this experience, now I know, like I can't unsee how much like 20 grams of protein looks like. And I can't like unsee that I know that's like 40 grams of carbs in that serving or whatever, right? It carries on into my day-to-day life because now I know. It's really trippy when you become that regimented and that hyper aware of something. Now trying to unlearn that behavior because it's no longer relevant and doesn't serve me. Knowledge is power. Like you can know something and have it help you because now I understand food. I know what works and what feels good. Like that's how I eat now. I eat more intuitively and more based on what feels good in my body than how it's gonna make me look per se. Like I'm a lot more chill on that nowadays. But it's a mind fuck and a lot of people get stuck in that trap. And I know people who even just do like one competition and never do it again, or just didn't even do a competition, but they're just so self-conscious about their weight and have been on all these different diets without the context of like a bodybuilding competition. Some people just have been on these yo-yos and roller coasters. So it really allowed me insight into how eating disorders can develop in people and what body image issues feel like. You know, like just by going through it and observing those tics and insecurities and anxieties in myself. You know, after you compete, you're never going to be as lean as you were when you competed, and you don't want to be, really, because that's not healthy and you know that feels horrible. But then there's also this other extreme now where I could look super jacked and you know, like weighing more does help with lifting more weight. So I was trying to find this balance of like getting stronger and building muscle, but then still like felt comfortable in my own skin. And I feel like in a way, like it still affects me to a certain degree. I don't really know how to word this. Like I'd have to constantly remind myself to not compare myself to a section of the spectrum that I know I can exist at, because I also know the lifestyle attached to it. So I'm trying to find a happy balance of, just being active and being healthy and doing things that make me feel strong and flexible and capable, but also not being super attached to the physical outcome of that. Bikini competition specifically focus a lot on that like hourglass shape. The ideal like look is like tiny waist, lean, a big butt that's like doesn't jiggle, and also most of like the pro competitors have implants. So this was a big thing. A lot of bikini competitors end up with implants. And as a person who grew up in the itty bitty titty committee, that really put that like at the forefront of what I had to confront. The rest of my body I can work on. If I want a bigger butt, I can grow it. If I want a leaner waist, I can cut for it. So there's like a specific ratio and look that these competitions and categories are looking for. Yeah, and it didn't really affect me, I think, on like the more local competitions, because the bikinis that you can get as much like gel put in them as you want, and from far away, like no one can actually really tell if that's a real boob or not. So that's fine. But it's just like the image of all these idols that you aspire to be, like the Olympian winners, all have this specific look about them. So it was also really interesting, like aside from like the body fat aspect of me trying to find comfort in my own silhouette and those shapes. So that was like a whole nother like exploration and personal journey that I went on. And also like the booty building culture, the butt was everything in a bikini competition essentially. So as a bikini competitor, like your like part of your self-worth actually gets placed on the shape of your butt, which sounds absolutely ridiculous, but there's truth in that. I think now it's a little bit more chilled out, or maybe it's just like my social circle and media consumption has changed, but I definitely noticed like less of like the hump day, big booty focused photos on like Instagram, which is really nice because, or maybe I'm just taking my attention off of it. Maybe it's still out there and like the forefront focus of somebody else, but I'm glad that it's not in my reality right now. Yes, for a while I was obsessed with butts. Like I would just look at butts all the time and like try to get a better butt. What I'm trying to say is my relationship with my body became very aesthetically focused, which is natural considering I was competing in a like sport that is focused a lot on aesthetics. Like yes, there is being an athlete because it takes training and knowledge of like nutrition, like weightlifting to do that, but ultimately a lot of the goals are aesthetically focused. I became a little bit obsessive. Like at the time it seemed fine and normal, but now looking back, I felt like I kind of was on a path to becoming a bit too much. Like for example, if you knew me since I've been like a traveler, it seems like I'm free and flowing like all over the world. But there was a time when I was bodybuilding where the thought of traveling would bring me so much like anxiety, and I didn't really want to do it because I didn't know if I could find a gym to train at. Like that was my main focus. Like I was worried that, oh, if I don't continue to train, I'm not going to be able to keep my gains. I'm going to lose muscle. Like I can't do that. Or I'm not going to be able to like meal prep and like eat the boiled chicken or baked chicken with nothing on it that I'm used to. And that became reason for me to not do certain things. So that's just like one example of how I even like track how much I've shifted, because now I can definitely travel and go touring and not like also be active along the way to feel good and strong. But yeah, I'm not obsessively going everywhere, and the first thing I look for is the nearest gym and weight room so I can like stick to that. I think there's a balance outside of the body relationship and food relationship. Something that I also really learned through prepping for shows is discipline and dedication, what that looks like and what is possible when you do that. It was a very physically tangible way for me to see the direct relationship between the work that I was putting in and the results I was getting. To know that I can set out to do something and commit to it for like 24 weeks and just commit myself to that, making that my lifestyle and not stray from that. And then also seeing the changes that happen in my body week to week. And then obviously like the show at the end is just like extra icing. I was never that show focused. I actually really fell in love with the process of just watching my body change and learning all these things about it, even if it means like going to extremes that were no longer healthy. But now I know what it takes to get there, what it feels like to get there, and I know the entire spectrum in between to choose where I want to be, have the tools to know how to make that choice. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover in terms of my bodybuilding experience and how that impacted my body image, body awareness, and my relationship with food. Also my habits and like my goal setting and goal achieving process. So those are like probably the three big takeaways, like other than like community and the relationship that I've built, obviously. Outside of that, in my own personal process, these are probably the three main things that I learned. I just became so aware of myself, how I interact with my body and interact with my food, how I interact with myself, which is all part of learning. So that's part 2. What is part 3 about? Oh, if you want to know about why I quit, like why I stopped bodybuilding and where I'm at now, then go to the next video that I'm about to film continuously. And yeah. Okay, bye.